So hello everyone, thanks for joining us on this sort of Thursday afternoon. We're here with Becci Scotcher, who's the Senior Grants and Programmes Manager at the PRS Foundation, and Davy Wales, who's a Performer Development Specialist at PPL. And we're going to be chatting today about all things how to apply to the PPL Momentum Music Fund. So I'm going to start by handing over to Becci to tell us a little bit about the foundation and the fund.
Sure thing. Hey everyone, hope you're having a great Thursday. PRS Foundation was set up in 2000 and we're the UK's leading funder of new music and talent development. So last year we had over 4,800 applications, which was a 20% increase on the year before. And our funding supports over 7,500 UK-based music creators every year. We spend approximately £3.2 million and on these grants, and it supports around 560 projects. It's very competitive. So therefore we can only support around 10% of applications that come through. So that kind of gives you an idea of the level at which kind of all the applications that come in and the level of acceptance and the kind of what you need to do in order to kind of get to that final coveted grantee status from the PRS Foundation and PPL Momentum Music Fund. So a little bit about the PPL Momentum Music Fund. It launched around 7 years ago in joint kind of conjunction between ourselves and Arts Council England. It was to support tipping point artists, mainly due to kind of a gap in talent development from the industry who were kind of more resistant to kind of risk taking. So we saw a gap along with Arts Council England and started the fund off about 7 years ago. Now the fund is run by ourselves with support from PPL, but also partners Creative Scotland, Arts Council of Wales, Creative Wales, Arts Council Northern Ireland, Invest Northern Ireland, and Ben Sherman in association with Spotify. So we have a lot of partners. It's pan-UK, you can apply from anywhere in the nations of the UK to this fund. And we offer grants between £5,000 and £15,000. And to give you some examples of some of the talent that we've supported through the fund, Sam Fender's been one, Years and Years, Little Sims, Bugsy Malone, Tom Misch, and Lapsley, just to name a small selection of the people who we've supported. So you can see the level of the artists that we're supporting through this fund. And yeah, and that's kind of where we are with that.
Thank you, Becci. And Davy, do you want to tell us a little bit about PPL and their involvement in the Momentum Music Fund?
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, my name's Davy. I'm a Performer Development Specialist at PPL. Essentially, I help out new artists, new emerging artists, make sure they understand the rights that we look after. It's generally referred to as like the master right or the neighbouring right. So if you're receiving broadcast on radio or television, or music's getting played in public, like in bars and shops and offices, then there's a royalty there. We administer that on behalf of recording rights holders. So that could be major labels, independent labels, people that are self-releasing music, and the musicians, like the performers on the recording as well. So that's the like the featured artist through to the non-featured session musicians as well. So yeah, I mean, essentially, if you own or have played on a recording that's getting broadcast in the UK or internationally, then you should definitely look into registering with us. It's free. You can do that via www.ppluk.com. Yeah, we became a partner of the Momentum Fund in November 2016. I believe. I mean, it's as Becci said, it's helped fund so many like incredible artists that have done well in the UK and beyond. So it's really important that that we invest in their careers to help them take those next steps. I think it's quite it runs parallel with a lot of the ethics and stuff at PPL. So yeah, so we're really proud to be a sponsor of.
Great, thank you both. So the way that we're going to run this session is we're going to start off with some sort of general questions that we tend to get through at the PRS Foundation regarding the PPL Momentum Fund. And then for everyone who is here in the Zoom, if you have questions specifically that you'd like answered to either of our panelists or both, do just ask them through the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom, and we'll come to them in around the last half an hour of the session. So Becky, we run quite a lot of funds at the PRS Foundation. What makes the PPL Momentum Fund different?
So I guess I touched on that earlier. It is part of our industry funds program. So it has to be, it is focused on something that is commercially viable and something that can be commercially exploited and kind of works, I guess, more in the popular music genres. It is about crucial, again, career tipping point. That is the main crux of it, which we'll get onto later. And for this fund, you have to have at least one member of your team with you. Like you can't be kind of just starting out, doing your first EPs, doing your first kind of just playing in your local community. That's kind of our earlier career support. You need to have been profiled with national press and received media coverage in the UK. And you need to just be out there and compared to our other funds, which are all career levels, this is definitely the next steps, and actually is at the top, I would say, top of the rung in terms of our support. It's the most money you can apply for, which I know everyone loves, but really do think about that. We'll talk about that later. But essentially, it is for people who are kind of getting to that, they've got hence the momentum name, you've got momentum, you're pushing through, and you're kind of at that top level, and it's the most you can kind of get from PRS Foundation before you do anything international. And actually you can't apply to any of our other funds other than International Showcase Fund if you get this money. So you really do need to think about whether that is the right time, and that's why it's different, because it is about that industry co-investment, that industry knowledge, and pushing you to the next steps.
Yeah, it's sort of I always think of it as like the catalyst fund, the sort of one that is the trigger point that then kicks you off into this trajectory.
Yeah, it's a stratosphere.
The stratosphere, indeed.
Yeah.
And lots of applicants come to us and have submitted their application and then find it a bit confusing or don't really understand how it is that the foundation decides who gets PPL Momentum funding. Davy, do you want to tell us a little bit about, once we've received an application, what happens?
Yeah, so after you've spent hours and weeks and however long it takes you to do that application, and you click submit, all the applications come through, and essentially they're distributed out to different experts around the industry, and they're judging the application primarily on two criteria. Sorry, I get quite animated when I'm on video.
Don't worry, I love the animation, it's good.
There's two criteria. First one, obviously, being the music. The music has to be of an exceptional quality. Without that, it's not going to work. So obviously, the music has to be a major part of it. The second part is the actual application, and the experts will give a score out of 5 for each part. So you get a total score out of 10, and then we decide which part's going to actually go through to the panel stage. So when I say panel stage, there's 4 rounds a year, and they're split up in. So there's two panels for each round, and essentially you've got it's quite expert driven. It's very expert heavy. So there'll be artists that have previously been funded on the judging panel. It could be artist managers, labels, people that work in press, people that work in radio, different music organisations. So come together. They'll have a panel. One will be predominantly like indie guitar music, rock, maybe singer-songwriters. The other panel will be focused on maybe like hip hop, grime, electronic music, dance music, pop, and all the judges are kind of tailored to that genre. So your application is being assessed by an expert, essentially. They will pick their top 8. They'll let the foundation know, saying these are the ones that I want to back, and then we will sit around in a table for an afternoon and essentially just strip through all the applications, put them apart, see what works and what doesn't. And after quite a stressful afternoon, we have a very short list of artists that are successful, and then the funding goes out to them.
And I think one thing it is also worth saying is that often people aren't successful on their first go, are they?
No,
So,
it's the one key bit of advice I'd give is never be disheartened if you apply and then you don't get anything on your first attempt. It usually takes a couple of applications, and then you tweak them as you go. You get feedback from the staff of PRS Foundation. Actually, make sure that your application is then unstoppable. So you've got the music's there and the plan's there, and there's no reason why people wouldn't want to fund it. Everyone can see that that the plan's going to work. There's going to be a return on the investment as well.
And Becky, how can people go about getting feedback on their applications?
So the team normally offer phone feedback days after the decision panel has taken place, where you can call the team between generally 10 and 5 p.m. To get feedback on your application. I mean, we can offer email feedback, but generally we recommend that you come through to the phone feedback day, just due to the volume of applications that we get. As I mentioned earlier, you know, nearly 5,000 applications a year, quite a lot of phone feedback time that we'd have to give, and we won't be able to give, but there are general things that people fall down on, which is what we're kind of covering here, which would make your application much stronger and therefore stand a better chance of being considered at panel stage and discussed, and the more that you can do there, the better, really.
Got you. And I'm going to ask this to both of you, but I'm going to start with Becky. What are your top 5 tips for people who are thinking of applying?
Okay, this kind of actually
I'll count them down.
Yeah. 5. Yeah, but if you go, this kind of goes across most funding, to be honest. However, I think it's really good for you to get in the mindset of you as a business. Like, the music industry is a business. It's an industry for a reason. And how our forms are set out are there kind of because they imitate and kind of can follow a flow of a business plan. So what you need to do is think about, where are you now? What's your 3-year plan? What do you want to achieve? How will you do that, and why? And the how and why is super important. You know, why is recording at this time at this particular studio with this particular producer really important, and what will that give you to take you to the next step? Why won't you be able to do it without the funding? Then again, it kind of comes back to this: be specific. Like, what's the detail? The who, what, why, when, how. We get a lot of generic applications. Won't cut it, I'm sorry. Saying, you know, I want to work with a PR to get my music into blogs and magazines. What does that mean? Like, what does that mean? You really need to be specific. It's not enough information. Again, provide evidence. So why are you at this tipping point? Kind of, what have you done so far? What interest have you got? Why will this take you to the next step? Always back it up, always provide evidence, always provide examples. The other thing is around your music tracks. You may have kind of changed your sound, and you may have modified it, and you've molded it to where you are now, and you know who you are, and this is, but your YouTube clip from 3 years ago has got loads of views. And you think, well, I know, do you know what? I'm going to shove that at the top because it's got loads of views. So that means they know I'm great, and they know that I've got interest. No. Put your best and your most relevant tracks to your sound now, not something from 3 years ago, because it doesn't show where you are at your tipping point now. It shows what your tipping point was 3 years ago. It makes no difference. We want to know what it is now. And actually, going back to kind of Davy's point, don't get too disheartened if you're not successful. Across all funding, you will kind of find that you will get rejections, and unfortunately that's the nature of the beast, which is not always, you know, great for your self-esteem, and we understand that, but actually just keep plugging away, and the more you talk to us, actually the more it can help you in your career, because you can refine your ideas, refine your objectives, see what path you want to be going down, and articulate that better each time. That's my 5.
Great, thanks, Becky. And Davy, any tips from your side?
It's really hard to go second. I'm probably going to echo some of the things that Becky said, but I like, when I look at an application, I like to see what it is that you want to achieve. Is it recording an EP or an album? Is it a successful tour? Is it marketing spend? Is it a combination of all three? And how is that activity going to make your career progress? How is that going to turn you into a self-sufficient career artist? And yeah, is it timely? Don't apply for money to go on tour if it's going to panel. Say you'll go to panel in March, for example. Don't tell us that your tour has already happened in February or something like that. You know, just think about when these activities are going to take place. From like a budgetary point of view, I really like to see contributions coming from elsewhere. Just because the amount of money that you can get from the grant is 15 grand doesn't mean it should just ask for 15 grand flat out. I want to see that you're bringing in your own revenue streams, so your merch or your gig fees, your licensing. If you've got money that's coming in from other sources, you know, if you've got your statement from your distributor, you've got a chunk of money which you're putting into the project. So I want to see that you're contributing at around about 25% of the funds yourself, and then the grant is offsetting that financial balance. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean we're gonna have a little bit of a more in-depth dive to budgeting, aren't we? A little bit later. So I'm sure we can.
Won't go too much into that now. And then yeah, as part of being a career artist, like have tangible things like after this tour or after this release, we can put our gig fees up. We can we'll be selling this much merch. Our socials will go up. Let's have like actual measurable things that you can achieve a couple of years down the line after this activity has taken place, because that's what's going to convince a panel that the funding's worthwhile. People hate using the term return on investment because it makes me sound like an absolute corporate stooge, but that's what we want to see. You want to see that, you know, if we give you a bit of money now, you can make that project happen. You can realize it to its full potential, and then you're going to be a self-sustaining artist going forward, which is, I know that for me that was always the dream anyway. So yeah. I don't know if it's 5, but
I mean, I'm sure combined, I'm sure we've got to 5. And I guess you've both sort of touched on this idea of thinking of the application form as a sort of business plan and a career plan of explaining what I have done. And this is my sort of background and my credibility. This is everything I've achieved. This is what I want to do now, and making sure you've got as much detail in there as possible. And then why this activity is the thing that will allow me to do X, Y, and Z. And it's sort of, you've both sort of touched on it, like the application form is almost telling that story to us as sort of, or I set that to our independent assessors who are reading it, is that sort of journey is really important to be thinking about.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, we've mentioned the sort of fabled tipping point a couple of times already today. What does it mean? What is a tipping point?
Go ahead, Davy. You can go first.
It means different things to different artists at different times, and there's so many variables that go into each individual artist's tipping point. So it's really hard to kind of specify what that exact tipping point is. So thanks, Becky. I appreciate you batting the question over straight away.
Oh, don't worry, I'll make her come back to it too.
Don't worry.
I think the tipping point can be, it is different for different artists. You might have someone that's already reasonably established, and they're looking for funding to make. They might have come out of like a major label deal, for example, and they're looking for funding to make their 3rd album, but release it themselves, and that's what's going to be the catalyst for them to move forward. On the flip side, you might have a new singer-songwriter from the north of England who may not have much access to like the infrastructure, like the actual industry side. So, you know, the tipping point for that new artist could be completely different compared to an established band that's about to put out their 3rd record. So it really does vary, essentially.
I would definitely, I definitely echo that. I think it's very subjective. As an artist, you're an individual, so your career path is individual. There isn't a tick box exercise to say, this is you at a tipping point. But what the tipping point for you means is, who is your team? What is your, where are you now? How, what audiences are you playing to? What will that then mean for you to get to that next step? And what does that funding mean for you to get to that next step? And could you do that without the funding, or do you need the funding to do that? And that's what we want to see. We want to see that this is timely investment in development, essentially. So, will it really catapult you to that next kind of layer of the pyramid? Will that then enable you to go from, I don't know, 150 cap venues to 500 cap venues? And it's all about that 3-year plan, where within that plan, what are the stepping stones that will uplift you? What are those steps? And that's where your tipping point is, and that's what you need to prove. And it needs to be at the right time, and you need to be thinking, at what point in the year should I be applying? And there will be different times of the year where our deadlines are busier or quieter, and it's all individual to you, and you need to see where your tipping point is, and it will be different for everybody. So trying to compare yourself to one artist that has been awarded compared to yourself, it's not a similar balance, because everybody is different. And as much as Davy was talking about different areas of the country, it is about that infrastructure and different infrastructure setups in mid Wales or compared to London. You have your peers around you in London. You have more access to the industry, so therefore we would expect to see different things from that artist potentially, and also genre, right? So different genres will have different tipping points. So for example, there'll be probably a capacity cap for certain genres potentially. So they may not be playing arenas, or like big those kind of venues, or academy venues. They'll be playing smaller venues, but for them, that is the top of their game. So it's all subjective.
And this is why we bring in independent assessors who have specific genre knowledge and things like that, is so that we can deal with every application on an individual basis, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Are we ready for a deep dive into the budget?
Am I ever?
I mean, we love it, don't we? We love the budgets. Right, let me just try and share my screen like I did before. Right, everyone got my budget?
Yeah.
Everyone see that?
Yep, just about.
Lovely. So this is just a blank application form for the PPL Momentum Fund that we've pulled out. Becky, do you want to chat through the budget?
Yes, let me.
Because I think we
I'm
find,
bring up another one on my screen. So
yeah, no worries. I think we find as well, this is a place where we get a lot of questions from applicants, and it can be incredibly confusing in terms of people not knowing what to put where or how to lay it out. So it's just always worth thinking through your budget, and so hopefully this will help everyone on the call.
So the first thing I would say about your budget is that when you're and again I'm going to talk about this plan, what is it that you want to do in your 3-year plan, and breaking that down, and how much is that going to cost. So what I would first suggest you do is, rather than thinking I'm going to apply to PRS Foundation, to the PPL Momentum Music Fund for £15,000, what I'm going to do is figure out what I want to do, how much it's going to cost me, where else will I get investment from first, and then ask us for the difference. First things first. Don't automatically assume that you should always come in for the top end. I mean, we all want to do that, of course, but it doesn't mean that you're likely to get it. It's going to show that you haven't researched and you're not really thinking about exactly what you're trying to achieve. So when looking at the expenditure, what we'd expect to see, so say you're going on a tour, for example, if we're looking at kind of artist band fees for rehearsal time, if you're just going to put kind of band fees for 5-date tour, £5,000, whatever, I'm just rolling out stupid numbers, but that means nothing. How many dates of the tour? How many members of the band are there? Do you have a sound guy? Do you have a tour manager? Do you have, what we want to see is it all broken down specifically, much like you would when you're doing your own budget for a tour. That's what we want to see, so that essentially we can see exactly where you want us to contribute to that overall project. Where we talk about checked and unchecked in that final column, it's always default to unchecked, which means you do not want us to consider that amount of money as part of our contribution. So say, I don't know, you're going on tour and you're going to have something in under additional expenditure for merch, for example. So say you want us to cover the costs of the rehearsal time, the musician's fees, the sound guy, the TM, but for the merch, you're going to try and cover that from your other sources. You would leave that unchecked. If you want us to contribute it, you need to click checked so we know what we're giving you money for.
And it's sort of a way of being able to write the budget holistically, isn't it? So if you're on tour, you have your live fees, but you also have your marketing, and you also have your transport, and you also have your merch, and you also, you know, have all of these component costs. But it's about being able to use the budget to give that big picture, but then really hone in with the checked and unchecked on what this funding is going towards.
Yeah, and also it tells us that, again, that you've researched how much stuff costs. That it's not just kind of throwing money into a black hole and you don't know how much that's going to be.
I think a lot of the time people find the level of detail, or the level of detail is what we don't often get in budget. And so how much detail do we expect? So do we expect it to be £97.48 per artist per day, etc.?
I mean, you can round it up, but I mean, you know, I don't want to know kind of how much your, I don't know, your packet of crisps on the service station is. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't need to know that level of detail, but I mean, imagine you're trying to assess somebody else's tour budget. You'd be like, well, where's that money going? Like, say you and your mates went on holiday, right? And I was saying, oh, you know, give me £5,000 and I'll sort out our holiday to Ibiza. Like, well, where's all that? What are you spending it on? Like, how much is the hotel? For how many people? Are we all sharing rooms? Do you see what I mean? It's like, it's that kind of thing. It's being specific, but not, I guess, not to the minutiae of detail, I guess. So, you know, I'm paying a TM for 5 days for my tour at £100 a day. That's fine. That's the level.
I like the comparison to going on holiday with your friends. I find that really helpful.
I'm not being funny, but we've all been there.
We've all been there. And this is a question that came up very quickly on expenditure in the last how-to that we ran. What if I wanted a bit of this line item covered by the fund, but not all of it?
Just put it in the details. Say, I know 80, say, going back to the TM, say 3 days covered by PRS Foundation. Fine.
Exactly.
And you put the total amount in the amount section, but in the description you would say 3 days at whatever, PRS cover that, and the rest. And we can understand that.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. So that's your expenditure. And then you've got your second section of your budget in the application form, which is for your income.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here you will see there's confirmed and unconfirmed income. So say you are, again, on a tour and you have your merch, you would put, you know, you would expect to sell, I don't know, 10 t-shirts, £10 each at each show, for example. So 5 shows, 500 quid. No, that's not right. Yeah, 500 quid. See, my math, I should know better. But you would put that in unconfirmed income because you don't know that then you're definitely going to get that money. But if you have a contribution from your label for tour support and that's confirmed, you put that in the confirmed income box. What we want to see is generally, like I said earlier, the difference between the amount of money that you have coming in from other sources. So whether that's your own money, your, you know, whether you're using some royalty income, whether your label, whatever, and any unconfirmed, so any kind of ticket splits or whatever, in the unconfirmed, all of that combined together is income, and then the difference between what you've spent and what that income is, that's the difference of the amount of money you should be requesting from us. And
yeah, so
put that into the box.
The grant amount line is always this sort of top up,
yeah,
what your income is to be able to get you to complete the project to what you outlined, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think people often find it, when we say the budget has to balance, that is why, is that the funding is the thing that is allowing you to be able to do this project. So it has to be the difference.
Yeah, and it has to equal zero. And and a lot of people will talk about, can I make a profit? Maybe. And I think, well, yeah, we want you to make a profit ultimately, further on down the line. But for this budget form, it has to equal zero. So your income cancels out your expenditure, completely zero. And then if you do make money, that's amazing. That's what we want you to do. We want you to have a sustainable career. We want you to get more money coming in. But just for this budget section, it needs to balance to zero.
Got you. And then there is also this section underneath the budget in the application form, which I think can be quite confusing for people, which is this in-kind question mark. Like, what does in-kind mean? And when should people be filling this out?
So say you were working, say you want to, okay, say for example, you wanted to do a project about recording, and say you wanted to record at a studio that you're really good mates with. So say, I don't know, not that this would generally happen, but you never know. Say you wanted to record in Strong Room and you knew you had mates at Strong Room and they were like, do you know what? We will give you 2 days free in studio, right? Essentially, you're not getting that cash in. It's an in-kind because there's no kind of money exchanging hands. You would put the value of that in the in-kind. And that's an amount of money that you're getting. So you're getting the service, but for nothing, essentially, but they're giving it to you in kind.
Yeah, we always had this when I worked at a venue. If you gave rehearsal space for free to someone, it is in kind, but you can quote the cost value that it would be to hire that space.
Yes.
In kind. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly that.
Awesome. If anyone does have any further questions on the budget, I know we've sort of very quickly skimmed through that, but if you have specifics, do just add them in the Q&A and we'll come to them in a second. This is my final question for our panelists before we turn to the audience. And this is, obviously, we're in a very surreal and strange situation at the moment, given the elephant in the room that we are all in our own bedrooms at the moment. How does the current pandemic affect people who are thinking of applying to PPL Momentum for the upcoming round? Becky? Go on.
So we still, we're still open and we're still open for business. We're still open to obviously accepting application forms. What we want to see is that you've thought about how the current situation may impact your activities that you're applying for. Bear in mind that PPL Momentum Music Fund, you have up to 24 months to complete all of the activity. So, you don't need to be doing everything now, but you can think about it in a longer term. We do want you to see that, you're taking on board government advice. You're not going to try and fly, you're not going to try and go to the studio in Nottingham like this week, for example. So we want to make sure that you're researching what the impact might be on you, on your project. So for example, do you need to push your tour dates back? Or what would your contingency be if you had to do that? So you need it at the moment, because everything, I guess, is so unknown. We are being really flexible with applicants and with what people are applying, kind of how we assess what people are applying for. But we want to see that you've done your research and plan and budget around that. So will it have budget implications if you have booked in a recording time with a producer? Can you still work with that producer 6 months later? Are they committed to working with you if you need to postpone? Does that affect your budget? What about if you've already thought you're going to start spending money on marketing and PR? Can they push that back? So it's about you thinking about that and articulating that in your application form so that we're aware that you've thought about these things, that you're not just going to think, oh, well, I'm going to go on tour in August. It's probably really unlikely that that's going to happen, And we're really keen for you to see innovative ways that you can, you're working now. This situation enables, in some respects you to be closer to the industry than you may have been before. I mean, everyone's sat at home and they're online. You know, there's lots of ways of you interacting with people. So, you know, how are you going to engage with your audiences differently? Are you going to be doing kind of shows from home? Are you going to, what things are you going to be doing essentially? And what will you do differently should the need arise? So it's doing a risk assessment essentially on your plan. Is it likely to go ahead? What do you think? And I know that everything's kind of up in the air at the moment, but there are some kind of sensible ways that you can kind of plan moving forward.
Cool, thanks, Becky. So we're going to go to audience questions now. So the first question is from Graham, which touches back on what Davy was chatting about the way that we assess and how the panel days work. So we said that there were two panel days per round, and these are sort of split into genres. And Graham just wants to ask, do these cover all genres essentially? So he's asking, does it cover Americana, folk, country, as well as the sort of genres that we previously mentioned?
So they're all grouped, moderately grouped together. I'm not sure if it has exact genre, like a drop down for genres when you're going through the application process, but we try and align it to, we try and align the experts to the day where that particular music's going to be assessed essentially. So you will have people from like rock and indie labels or artist managers assessing the day where there's more guitar music being played, and then you will have people from maybe like hip hop radio stations or electronic press or labels, for example, on the second day when that genre is being looked at. Obviously, trying to it is multi-genre, but it's going to be a contemporary popular music. So if you're coming from a classical background or an old school jazz background, then potentially it's not the right fund for you for your particular project. The new school kind of jazz, like Sons of Kemet and Robo Cobra Quartet, etc., that newer jazz, that will absolutely get assessed, and we have people that are experts in that particular genre as well.
I think.
Yeah. So I was just going to add into that when things are assessed, so they're essentially assessed twice. So say you are Americana, country, world, you know, whatever genre, they're assessed first by a panel of independent experts anyway. So they'll go to those experts, and we'll shortlist that by genre and send those out to those specialist advisors. And then if that then does make it in the long list to the panel, then there will be somebody there who has knowledge of and expertise in those genres to cover that genre in that panel. So everyone is covered, but as David says, it is more on the kind of commercially exploited popular work. So it needs to be able to have a return for us to be able to invest in that.
Cool. We've got another question here from Bex, which is touching back on this idea of the tipping point. And she's asked whether there's any examples we can think of from the top of our heads of artists such as Tom Beach, who we funded through PPL Momentum, and what their tipping point was. Now, I know that we've obviously probably all seen thousands of applications, so it might not be possible, but I wondered if either of you have someone that you could think of as an example.
I'm actually just going to point back to, if Bex wants to watch the Anna Meredith in Conversation with yesterday, where she talks about kind of where she was, and she went from kind of that more classical side and working with orchestras to creating her own kind of electronic stuff, and it was kind of looking at kind of doing EPs and things like that. And even though she had a kind of was more established in that classical world, in the more kind of in the more electronic kind of genre, she wasn't as established. So it was kind of, she was making a name for herself, and she was getting interest and things like that. And it's all about kind of getting the interest and that momentum of where you are. So it is very unique, I think. So I would definitely suggest you watch that, because that's probably the quickest and easiest way for you to see an example.
I think you have to consider the time as well, because I think Becky mentioned it earlier. Once you've had the PPL Momentum Music Fund, that's it. That's like the top rung of the funding. So you really need to think about the timing of when you're applying for that, because that is going to be the cut-off from these grants.
Got you. We've got one from Ben in the chat, which sort of also links to this tipping point, and also this thinking about applying to PPL Momentum as a career plan. And we've been talking a lot about having a 3-year plan. And Ben's asking, but if we have to complete all of my project activities within 2 years of receiving the grant, how does that work? Why do those activities have to happen in 2 years?
We generally find that, so the 3-year plan is just an example. It's for you as an artist to think about your career. It's not necessarily for the fund. I think it's a really useful tool. If you'd like, think of it as a 2-year plan. But as Davy mentions, we want to see what's going to happen after those 2 years. Where are you going to go with this? So we generally find the return and return on investment and the development of the artists who apply to PPL Momentum Music Fund happens in that 2-year time frame. And we've been running it for 7 years, so this is the experience that we have. I mean, obviously some people may take longer, and that's just by its nature, but generally it's in that kind of 2-year time period that people are able to make that significant step and get to that next stage, or as our industry funds manager would say, get over that peak of that mountain that you've been kind of pushing through, and kind of enables you to kind of be unstoppable. Favorite phrase, you should all learn it.
Favorite phrase, unstoppable. So Alex has asked, we're a 5-piece band to do everything ourselves, marketing, booking, PR, but we're not at the stage to be able to hire somebody to help. So they don't have a team member, but have made really good progress themselves. Can we still apply?
You have to have at least one team member.
Is there anything, Becky, you'd like to flag in terms of other funds that might be available for them?
Yeah, sure. So I think PRS Foundation have a number of different funds. Probably your first port of call would be the Open Fund for Music Creators, where you can apply for up to £5,000. You don't need to have a team around you. Obviously it is for a lesser amount of money, but I think if you're doing it a lot DIY anyway, you can probably find ways to kind of shave costs and kind of manage the scope and size of your project. And actually that way, in some respects, you can then come back in to PPL Momentum Music Fund, and if you're successful with that, you'll get even more money. So actually coming through our different funding routes is generally preferable than you jumping straight into PPL Momentum.
Yeah, I really like it when we've got an applicant that's had something like the Open Fund or Women Make Music, and they've gone, here's what I did with that money, wasn't it great? Now what I need to do next is this, can you help out? And we've already got evidence of your trajectory, and we know that you've achieved we know that you've achieved like your previous project. It's all evidence, it's all there. So yeah, I really like it when I see people come from one of the other funds and then almost like graduate into the Momentum.
Got you. So I've got 2 questions, one from Violetta and one from Bridget or Brigid, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Are you allowed to pay yourself a fee for your performances? So if you're going on tour, can you pay yourself a fee as part of your budget?
I wouldn't suggest that you couldn't necessarily. Well, music creators should be paid for their time. I mean, if you're going to pay your, I don't think we generally find that in Momentum applications. I think if you're on the more classical side, you would find that people would pay themselves a fee. So I would have to kind of, personally, I don't see why not, but it would probably be something that I would rather get back to you on to make sure that is something that we would accept.
No worries. So if anyone has a question about paying themselves a fee, if you want to drop us an email over, or drop me an email, which is Asia, that's AJA @prsfoundation.com, and we can come back to you on that specifically.
The major contribution as well, right?
Pardon?
There's the there's a section in the application in the budget where you can have a project manager as well. There, so you could, if you've got someone overseeing the project, then you can part of the funding can go to them to oversee everything. So it goes back to wanting a team member there, because we want to know that someone's going to make sure that the project is achieved. So if you need to pay someone to do that as part of the budget, then if it's somewhere near the bottom of the budget, I'm trying to recall it from memory, it's been a little while since I've looked at one. If you get at the bottom of the budget, I'm sure there's a project manager.
It's like the management contribution, isn't it? And there's a certain percentage of the, or a certain amount of the total grant ask that you can request to be put aside for management contribution. Yes. Rob's asking if there's an example bid that we could see anywhere, or a successful application that could be used for potential applicants to have a look at.
I haven't seen one as yet. I think that it would all require GDPR issues. I think the only thing I would say around kind of providing an example of a form is that, as I talked about earlier, everyone's career is different and everyone is unique and every artist is unique and so it's going to be unique, and there is no cookie cutter way in which to apply, which means you'd be successful. So without kind of knowing all the context of the artist, who they are and those kind of things, I think it can be quite a difficult thing to make public. I know a lot of the examples that we give have been really specific and actually are what you should be doing, and you know, we do aim to help as many people as we possibly can through kind of workshops and things like that. So we don't currently, as I mentioned, it would be a GDPR issue because obviously it's the data protection of that applicant who was successful, to see whether we would be able to do that. And a lot of it would be redacted because some of it might be really highly sensitive information, such as kind of contributions from management and things like that. So probably not, but we can kind of give you tips and guidance. It's probably the best way to answer that.
Thanks, Becky. So Elliot has asked another question, which is again coming back to this idea of the management contribution. So I'm going to ask it, and if we don't know Elliot, just follow up directly with me over email and I can make sure that we come back to you with the detail. But Elliot's asking, as a campaign manager, not as a full artist manager, and therefore not earning a percentage cut of the earnings, I could request a fee as part of the fund.
No, because it's about the manager kind of steering the career of the artist and that kind of investment. I think if they were going to put kind of fees in to the budget for kind of campaign management through, you know, online or whatever, then that's part of the total budget, but it's not the management fee.
Can you just expand a little bit more on what you mean?
Well, so if you like the day-to-day manager, you know, you're part of the management core team, or you a campaign manager on their press or their promotion, things like that. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think it's whether you're their day-to-day kind of steering their career for that kind of long term, or is it for that specific campaign, and is it around marketing, press and things like that? And that would come under a marketing line, not a management line.
Got you. Understood. So it's not a management contribution, but it could be put into the budget line because it's part of the project delivery.
Yeah, because that would be what you would be paying a campaign manager around, kind of, you know, that release.
Yeah,
but it's not as their kind of day-to-day manager.
Got you. Lovely. We've run out of questions in our Q&A at the moment, so I'm gonna ask a question just for fun. Who have you both been most proud to have supported?
Going to favoritism now.
Sorry. You can decline to answer, Davy. But I want to make sure that as questions that they want to ask, they still have the time to get them through to us.
Trying to come up with something diplomatic. I mean, there's been some like phenomenal people. Obviously, like I mean, Sims for me is an incredible artist. Like sports team as well. I think they're doing wonders at the moment. I think they're great. Like Hardy Caprio and JK and people like that. They're all people that have come in. I feel like they've come in at the right time. They've taken the grant. They've done something with it, and now, you know, you hear them on the radio all the time, or you see them in the press. They've really kicked on. So yeah, some people like Hardy, Flahio maybe. Flahio live is insane. So if you ever get a chance to see her, then you should. There's been loads.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and our kind of, you know, years and years are definitely one that kind of, I think through the fund were really kind of propelled and supported. And I think kind of late, if you've not kind of heard Ryan Vale's electronic artist in Northern Ireland, it's really great. There's some great Welsh artists like Kate LeBon or Buzzard. You know, I mean, the expanse of the artists that have been supported. You know, if you just look at the list, I'm like, oh, I love that. Oh, I love them. You know, and I think we've been really lucky to kind of get those artists through, and actually just really proud that we're able to support them kind of on their trajectory and their careers. It's amazing to see.
Right, we have had another
genres as well.
Yeah, the genre diversity is brilliant, I always think. And like, I love working at the PRS Foundation because you just discover new genres, or like people from genres I would not listen to every day. It's great.
Yeah.
And we've had a question come in from Louise. So Louise has asked, does a radio plugger count as part of your team? And I guess I'm going to sort of expand on her question as to, when we say you need a team member, what counts as a team member?
So yeah, I would say that radio plugger is part of your team. You know, so we're talking manager, booking agent, record label, publisher, lawyer. You know, any of those.
Any of those. So there you go, Louise. Radio plugger.
Obviously, I think the more people you have in your team, the stronger the proposition can be, because it shows the industry investment in you, and then kind of gives that kind of level of taste making, I guess, in that, you know, it shows that there's already interest in the industry. That's not to say if you have one team member you wouldn't get supported. It could just present a stronger case. So it might be that if you only have one team member, it might be a bit early for you, really, even though we do enable applicants from those who have one team member. It just all depends on, again, where you are, what the buzz is, and things like that. I
think sorry, I was just going to say, if you come into the application process and you've got an artist manager and an accountant and a lawyer and a radio plugger, just to reiterate what Becci said, it just kind of breeds confidence in the artist and what they're trying to do. It is like industry tastemaker kind of support, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, God, cringing at my own statements now.
Rob's asked, are there any common errors or things to avoid when writing an application?
Not being specific enough. That sounds a bit patronising, but essentially there's a lot of generic answers that people give, that people think, or applicants think, that you want to hear. We've seen them all, you know, like we've seen them all. And so being specific and just researching, just really research what you want to do and how much it's going to cost, and, you know, your timelines, and, you know, and why it's important to you. Really think about it. This isn't something to be taken kind of on a flick lightly to do. It will take time and it does require investment. So if you're going to do it, you may as well do it properly rather than rushing. The other thing I would suggest is don't apply right at the deadline. It's tech things happen, and, you know, we can be flexible to some degree, but if you're prepared enough, you might be just better off waiting to the next deadline and giving yourself that time frame to do that. And they're every 3 months, the deadline. So really, that 3 months you should be prepared to kind of get that in. So I would take your time with it. Don't rush it. Seek advice from other people. Seek advice from your team. Get other people to read it. And be specific.
I would also say answer the question is a big thing. Is often people get caught up in saying what they think we want to hear rather than actually reading and answering the question, which I think is really important. I know that sounds stupid, but answer the question. David, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, make your costs reasonable as well. You know, do you really need to spend 10 grand on a music video? I don't, like, just come on, like, think about what it is that you're actually doing, and keep in mind that the applications are getting reviewed by people that work in the industry, like I say. So if you're putting in ridiculous costs for press and PR, you know, there's a strong chance there's going to be someone from press and PR that's on that judging panel, and they might just tear that apart and go, no, these costs are really overinflated, or, you know, they're not spending enough. So make sure your costs are reasonable. And something that we haven't mentioned as well is the language that you're using on the application as well. It doesn't need to be Chaucer. It doesn't need to be like Shakespearean English. They're being read by people that work in music, so feel free to use music terms. It doesn't need to be an essay as well. Just imagine the people that are reading your application and judging it are people that are probably very similar to yourself. So speak to them in your language.
Great. So I've got one from Bernadette, who has said that she's applied several times for PRS Foundation funding and have got through to the second stage, but hasn't received anything yet and is struggling to find feedback. It's very disheartening and makes it difficult to reapply. And she's asking, is there any point?
I'm really sorry to hear that you haven't had constructive or feedback as yet. I think that it can be really disheartening, and we completely can understand that. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we can only support 10% of the applications that come through. If you want to drop Asia an email, and it can be passed on to me, and I can look at that for you. But the other thing I would say is you just don't know who else is in the round with you. It's a competitive process, and unfortunately, in that round, it can be minutiae of something that just means that somebody else gets it instead of you, and yeah, it's just not a fair thing, and it's not a fair. But that's unfortunately the process of competitive funding, and we can definitely kind of have a look to see if there's things that you might be able to tweak to kind of maybe push it just that bit further so that you can get support. We're getting more and more applications all the time, and I don't want that to kind of be disheartening for people. I think it's just about kind of setting expectations of the current situation that we're in and the amount of applications that we do get. But please do drop us a line, and I can have a chat with you about kind of where we are and what other options that there might be, or what might be more appropriate. It might be that you were applying not at quite the right time, or who knows, there can be a multitude of reasons. So please don't be too disheartened, which I know is very easy for me to say, but it does take a few attempts for people to get funding, and we can help support you as much as we possibly can to try and make sure that you're able to produce the best application you can for you at that time.
Cornelia's got a really interesting question, which is, what is the current representation in the expert panel between men and women?
So we always make sure that we have a equal gender split on our panels. The same kind of goes for regionally or in the different nations. We also try and ensure diversity of background. So we're always trying to find ways to ensure that we are as representative of the industry and the UK population and people making music as possible.
Great, thanks, Becky. Graham's asking, how important are the social followings of the artist on the application? So Facebook followers, Instagram followers, etc.
Totally depends on the application, I think.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know, it feels like a bit of a cop out answer, which is why I wanted to get in there before Becky did. But yeah, it's you know, it really depends on what stage you are in your career. It gets factored in, it gets looked at. We may expect you to have more online traction, but you know, for some artists that isn't what it's about. You know, you might have somebody that's got tens of thousands of followers on Instagram, but nothing on Facebook. You may have someone that does really well on Twitter, but you know, not on other media. So I think it really does depend on the artist as well.
I think it's that thing again where we were talking about tipping point is for the individual, and we're taking an application as a holistic thing. We're not looking at it and being like, oh, well, you only have 5,000 followers on Facebook, you can't possibly be momentum ready. It's a part of the whole package and the whole story of where you are and where your career's at, isn't it? Like, it's not, we're not going to go, oh, you're not popular enough. Right?
Yeah, completely.
I think certain socials lend themselves to different genres as well. You may have I don't know, this is all hypothetical, obviously, that you may have a jazz band or something like that, modern jazz that may not have as many social media followers as like a grime artist or a DJ perhaps, but the tipping point for that new jazz act is going to be completely different to the tipping point for the grime artist. So
cool. Russell's got two questions that are both quite interesting, I think. He's saying that some commercial popular genres are potentially more lucrative but less artistically satisfying / valuable for music creators or listeners. How important is commercial success and profit in an application, and how much is artistic value taken into consideration versus the profitability?
So
you want to go there?
Yeah, well, unless Davy wants to, I don't know. I think, as was mentioned at the beginning, how applications are scored 50-50. So it's 50% music, like the quality of the music, the standard of the music, and 50% plan, budget, what you're trying to achieve. So if the music's rubbish, sorry to say, it doesn't matter. You're not going to go anywhere. So you're not going to be. Music is our number one kind of, you know, it's the creation of exceptional new music. So that's our key priority at PRS Foundation. You know, so whilst yes, you know, and music is subjective, right? Everyone's got their own kind of opinion on what works and what doesn't. But music, you know, the quality of music is number one, and that's never diminished. So, and you know, like I said, it's subjective. So you may not like heavy metal, but there are people who love heavy metal. So we will have experts who know about heavy metal, know the quality of that heavy metal artist.
I think like the two-stage criteria whittles that down really quickly as well. So you may have a brilliant plan. Your budget might be absolutely faultless, but if the music's really derivative, then it's not going to get put through.
Simple as, Davy. John has asked, and I'm going to direct this one specifically to Becky, are there specialist funds for artists who are disabled?
We don't have specific specialist funds, but we do have, through our certain funds, we have support for access costs. So through our open programme, we have a portion on the budget where it's completely separate to the kind of core costs of the project, for example, that say if you require a personal assistant to help you if you're going on tour, you can apply for additional access costs, which will be considered by the team. It's not kind of, it's considered after panel, it's not considered at the panel, so it's not kind of a factor in that's considered afterwards. So we don't have anything specific which is for disabled artists, but we do provide support for disabled artists through certain funds at the moment. And we would hope that we would be able to kind of expand that wherever possible.
Got you. Thanks, Becky. And this is going to be our final question. So we've touched on this a little bit, which is, well, sorry. So how many times can I apply to the Momentum Fund a year? Can you apply 2 times per year? And we get this question actually a lot as well, is can I put in multiple applications across your funding streams, or can I just keep applying? And what would you recommend, Becky? Is it a...
So on our website, we have a actual link that tells you how many times you can apply to any fund in a year. Momentum, you can apply twice a year, but you can only apply to a maximum of 3 different schemes a year. So for example, say you apply to Momentum Music, PPL Momentum Music Fund twice, and then you applied for the Open Fund for Music Creators, you could not then apply for International Showcase Fund, for example. So we have a link on our website which enables you to see how many times you can apply to our funds. But for Momentum, it's twice a year.
And people often, I get this question a lot through the applications inbox, is people who are uncertain about what fund they should go for often ask, can I put in an application to the Open Fund and Momentum at the same time?
Well, I wouldn't recommend it. But the other point is that while I understand that it may appear confusing, what I would always suggest that you do is you speak to us first before even writing an application, or even, just with a brief synopsis of kind of who you are, where you currently are in your career, what you're trying to achieve, kind of what interests you have. We can probably direct you, well, we can direct you in the right path, because ultimately, if you do a scattergun approach, it kind of looks like you don't know what you're doing and you don't really have a direction in mind. The same goes for our Open Fund for Music Creators and Women Make Music. If you apply in the same round, we are likely to just reject both those applications before it even gets shortlisted. So I would always recommend that you email us to kind of scope out which one would be best for you at that point in your career.
A little bit like matchmaking, isn't it? You've got to find the right fund for yourself.
Yes. I was going to say I'd buy a hat like Cilla, but I think other people on this Zoom call might be too young to understand who Cilla Black is.
I do in fact know who Cilla Black is, and I take the age dig quite personally. Thank you very much. Latifah's asked, is there more weight given in an application to someone who has already done an event or performance before, rather than someone who's just starting out as a beginner? And I think we've sort of touched on this already, in that the PPL Momentum Fund is for those people who have already built up a track record, and this is their tipping point to catapult them to the next thing.
Yeah.
We have other early career funds and all career funds that are more suited perhaps to people who are just starting out or have started a new project. But yeah, the PPL Momentum Fund is not for a beginner.
No, it's not for those just starting out. No, definitely not.
Bex has asked, so with Momentum, we said that once you've received Momentum, you can no longer apply for any other PRS Foundation funds other than the International Showcase Fund. Mm-hmm. Is that the same across all funds, or can you apply multiple times to some funds?
It's different across our funds. So you can apply to, so for our Next Steps funds, so that's Hitmaker, the Composers Fund, and PPL Momentum Music Fund, you can't apply to our other schemes other than International Showcase Fund. That's because this is the peak of your funding trajectory, I guess, within PRS Foundation. Whereas if you could apply, for example, to Open Fund for Music Creators and then apply for Women Make Music. However, this would have to be for a different project. We do like to ensure that we are supporting first-time applicants as well, to ensure that, you know, more people have access to our funding schemes. So it's just something to bear in mind. And as we've just kind of talked about, we would always suggest that you talk to us if you are thinking of, you've already had support through kind of the all career level support before applying for something else. But we would expect you to kind of move through the levels of funding. So through kind of say Women Make Music and then onto Momentum or onto Hitmaker Fund, for example, or Composers Fund.
Great, thank you, Becky. I think that is probably all we've got time for in terms of questions. So I'd like to thank Becky and Davy, who seems to have miraculously disappeared from the Zoom call. He's just gone, he's had enough. We're taking the time out to sort of chat through this. If people still have questions and want to get in touch, you can email us at applications@prsfoundation.com and we will try to get back to you as soon as we can. We do receive a lot of inquiries, but bear with us. We will get back to you. And I've sent a couple of people my direct email as well, so do get in touch with specific questions or anything like that. The next round of PPL Momentum is open now with a deadline of 6 p.m. on the 26th of May, she says. I think that's very true. So if you're planning on getting your application in, best of luck. We hope this has been incredibly helpful, obviously, because we're wonderful. But yes, with questions, just drop us an email. And yeah, thank you, Becky and Davy, for a lovely, lovely webinar.
Thanks
for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye.